My name is Patrisse Cullors. I'm one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter Global Network.
My name is Rodney Diverlus. I'm one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter in Canada.
Guys, you've heard from local Mildura mob in the area about some of their achievements, their community-driven achievements, some of their goals, some of their history, both traditional and colonial, but also some of the issues, the ongoing issues. What's been your impression so far?
Okay, Patrisse Cullors here,
Hey, it's
and Rodney, and we are at the Virgin Australia. It's kind of backwards, but we're here at Virgin Australia, about to head out to receive the Sydney Peace Prize. Just really looking forward to meeting the Aboriginal community in Australia to talk about Black folks. And thank you all for inviting us, and we can't wait to see you on the ground.
Jet lag is something, for sure.
Nangai, Nungu, Wimcha, Malpa, Mali Malpa, Nungu, Kiera. So what I've just said is I would like to welcome you here on the lands of the Lachi people. I'd like to pay respects to my elders, past and present, also my future elders, which are here today dancing.
It's a very special thing when you're on a journey. We smoke you, and no bad spirits can't follow you. Every tribe, every different group from all different places. We always do this to people that come through the journey and the travel, so the bad spirits don't follow you.
We sat with the elders of the Koori court first, and in terms of diaspora, we heard about this breaking down of traditional nation boundaries and some of the problems that presents for the local mob working within the system.
And that's our job as the cultural advisors to the judge, but also culturally advising the clients that are sitting in front of us.
I've been thinking a lot about why is it important for a government to incarcerate its communities, specifically Black communities. What does it do for it? And now, having been to Palestine, having been, living stateside, Canada, Australia, throughout Latin America, and on the continent, incarceration in particular has been a tool to not just facilitate containment of a community, but it's been a way to facilitate the destruction of a community's spirit.
Yeah.
And having learned about the impact incarceration has had on this community, and even though the Koori courts are living inside of the system, there's still something really revolutionary about that, and really powerful about that. And I think, what is it? Control of something that has historically controlled us. And that's what, that's the difference. Yeah. We don't have that stateside. We don't get to determine what happens to us, Many of our folks spend decades inside state prisons and federal prisons. And so to hear these elders sort of circle in this conversation about having real talk conversation with the person who's harmed, it's something that I've only dreamed of, and so it was very powerful to hear it happening in real life. And it's, I don't want to romanticize it, because I'm pretty sure it has all of its flaws.
As we heard later.
Yeah, as we heard later, for sure. But it's definitely a step that feels like, I don't even know when we'll get there in our context.
I also think that it really flips the concept of criminality as well. All over the world, we see Black folks being overrepresented in crime statistics, and I always want to flip the concept of thinking of crime, because it's not as if Black folks are more criminal than others,
or more deviant,
or more deviant. We're not naturally more evil than other folks. I think that we live in particular systems that in conditions that don't support us in our lives, that don't support us in thriving and living and moving and growing. That the conditions in which people were born into are the conditions that also end up resulting in their imprisonment and incarceration. So I think that I really, really enjoyed and appreciated the ways that the folks in Mildura are experimenting with how to free themselves from that, the cycle of imprisonment and the cycle of incarceration, and thinking of justice in a way that's more holistic and that liberates our people rather than puts us behind chains.
That was a common thread that went through a lot of conversations yesterday, was intergenerational disadvantage as well as inequality.
Yeah, my biggest thing is just the cycle and trying to break that cycle. It's just the problems, like, they're real. You know what I mean? Like, and if you grow up seeing alcoholic mother or father or whatever, and you grow up, you don't see any difference. You know what I mean? So
We also heard it when we heard from Auntie Margaret and Uncle Pete about life on the mission and some of that history. And I guess this plays into the unique form of diaspora that we've got. It's a slower diaspora. I like to think of it as the ongoing colonial project.
Something happens when you've lived under decades of colonialism. You're sort of hardened. Auntie Margaret mentioned losing her sibling from pneumonia, and just kept talking. And there was this way, listening to the both of them talk, that personally, I felt like I was listening to so many tragedies, but we weren't able to take the pause to be, to sort of be like, that was actually terrible. That should have never happened. I actually want to tease us out a little bit, and we can use this or not, but we counter this a lot stateside, not all of us, but this concept that, drugs, alcohol, in particular, these substances are the ones that ruined our families. And while I do agree that the impact of drug and alcohol abuse deeply impacts families, I come from a family that has a history of drug and alcohol abuse, I actually think that's not the central contradiction. The central contradiction is colonialism. For us, it was the war on drugs, right? What I'm hearing is this, the criminalization of Indigenous communities, Black communities. And so as I was listening to them both speak, and really the themes that came up yesterday in our conversations with folks, there was this piece in there that I felt was kind of missing in the conversation, which was colonialism destroyed people's lives and their dignity, their concept of self, and that in fact right now there's a generation of people that's actually reclaiming what colonialism took from them.
And taking them out country and land and bringing them home and making them understand, hey, you are Aboriginal, and this is who you are, you be proud of yourself.
And sort of alcoholism and stuff like that is the byproduct, but that's not actually the issue.
Symptomatic.
Yeah. And so that to me is I feel like it's important to tease out, because there's this trope about, Indigenous people or Black people where we just drink and we use drugs and, we can't cope with our lives. And I'm like, actually, lots of people drink and use drugs, and it doesn't have the same impact on them. So what is really happening? It's the colonial project that is destroying our communities and our families' lives, and that's compounding our trauma. And then sure, drug and alcoholism become the symptom, become the thing that we are using to cope. But it's not the central contradiction. And I don't want to give white people and colonialism so much space to not be held accountable in this conversation. And I feel like that to me was powerful yesterday because we ended our day and we went and had dinner, and the weight, I felt heavy, even though there was such power and resilience. It was like, oh, I need to remind myself it's colonialism that's like trying to kill our communities, and sometimes has in fact killed our communities.
Okay, let's go down to the river where we heard from the colourful Uncle Pete telling you about. We heard some traditional history there about the large fish that created the river and what the river means to this region.
Tell the story about the Maori cod.
And the banda, we got a big cod in there. It's huge. It's way bigger than us again. That fish, it made the river. We call it banda. It made it. That's our Dreamtime story. When the big fish come all the way down and goes up to Queensland, all the way down to the Coorong country, down to the sea, the cod, it swam and kept on swimming, and that's where the hunters and the trackers, they found him and they speared him and they cut him up, all different pieces, and they chucked all that piece back in the water. That's why we got all different fish today, because of that big fish, and we call it banda. And that's our Dreamtime story, but it's real.
I really, that was one of the big highlights to me yesterday, was the trip to the river and to hear from Uncle Pete and our elders around the importance of the river traditionally to the land. I think that as we move into this digital world, it's actually ever more important to take it back and to reel back and to think about our connection to the land and how the land has had a deep connection to our communities and our people as well. As we talk about colonialism as well, we know that access to land and access to our resources is across the board an issue with Black and Indigenous communities.
My story, my language. When I dance with the old people, the spirits.
I know that there's a different contexts and that, Black folks, my kind of Blackness and your kind of Blackness and our kind of Blackness are different, but I think that there's an incredible amount of pride seeing resistance happening at different local communities.
We have an opportunity right now. We have an opportunity as a global Black tradition to really figure out, like, what is it going to take? What are the next steps for our movement? This trip is so powerful because we have to do it as a part of the global Black family. This is not a U.S. issue. This is not a domestic or a civil rights issue. This is a human rights issue. And I think putting that in perspective is critical in this moment.